AMD has finally released the next generation of GPUs, the RDNA 3 family of graphic cards. This, tech people, is the ASUS TUF 7900 XT. How does it stack up against the competition? Let's dive into Team Braid to find out. Hey guys, Rematan here, welcome. Let's first begin with the specs of this 7900 XT. It has 20 gigs of VRAM, it's PCIe 4.0, not 5.0, which is still plenty for a high-end GPU like this. The 7900 XT has a base, or as AMD rightly calls it, a game frequency of 2 GHz. It can boost up to 2.4 GHz. For this ASUS TUF OC, you'll get an additional 75 MHz on the base, as well as an additional 50 MHz on the boost frequency. And let's bring up its nearest competitor, the RTX 4080. This is the end of 2022 high-end GPU battle of the TUFs. Man, even though I've seen and felt this a few times, I still can't get enough that the 7900 XT TUF is actually bigger than the RTX 4080. Anyway, more on the design later, so make sure to stay till the end of this review. So this is the test setup. Both the 7900 XT and 4080 will use the AMD Ryzen 7700X on the ASUS X670E-F. 32 gigs of G.Skill Trident Z5 Expo RAM, 6000 MHz, and the super shiny ROG 4 1600 watts titanium to provide all the power headroom these GPUs may require. So, which GPU is more tough? Benchmark time. First off, let's take a look at the power draw. This TUF 7900 XT consumes 274 watts during my test runs, which is 40% less than the RTX 4080. It also manages to keep a nice 55 to 56 degrees C during the benchmarks. The 4080 also has a similar average of 55 degrees C, but in contrast, it has a bigger range up to a maximum of 64 degrees C. Going to our first gaming benchmark, CSGO. I guess most esports gamers playing games such as CSGO and Valorant don't mind spending more money to get really high FPS. On CSGO, the RTX 4080 is a wee faster than the 7900 XT. On 4040p however, the 7900 XT is 30 FPS faster than the 4080. On 4K, though I'm not so sure why you want to play CSGO on 4K, the 7900 XT is also faster than the RTX 4080. But what is more important, the 7900 XT still manages a sizable 200 plus FPS even with all of the smoke grenades and flashbangs exploding on your screen. You don't need to worry about any performance issues if you or your enemies decided to throw all the grenades all at once. Game number 2, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. On the Ultra setting, the 4080 wins the 7900 XT at both 4040p as well as 1080p. There is a good lead from the 4080 on these two resolutions. On 4K however, the gap between the two GPUs close up, with the 4080 winning with only a few FPS. Next game, Far Cry 6. As an AMD sponsored title, it is not surprising that the 7900 XT wins the RTX 4080. At the DXR of FSR quality setting, there is a 50 to 20 FPS lead from the RX 7900 XT over the RTX 4080. You also see the same outcome with DXR lighting and reflections turned on. The 7900 XT also has the same 50 to 20 FPS lead over the RTX 4080. That said, performance from both GPUs are very consistent. The 7900 XT and 4080 are able to deliver more than 100 FPS even at 4K Ultra resolution. Game number 4, Cyberpunk 2077. I believe I have the latest version of this game. On the Ultra preset, FSR 2.1 is automatically set to quality. On this setting, Cyberpunk 2077 is definitely playable at 1080p for both GPUs. As we go to 4040p, there's now a big gap as the 7900 XT pulls to 60 FPS, but the 4080 remains at almost 100 FPS. And of course, you'll want to know how a 7900 XT performs on 4K. Both GPUs are impressive. The 7900 XT gives almost 70 FPS and the 4080 71 FPS on 4K. And Watch Dogs Legion is a more interesting one. On Ultra, with ray tracing turned off, the 7900 XT wins the 4080 with a good 20 plus FPS on both the average and 1% lows. At higher resolutions such as 4040p, the gap becomes narrower on both the average and 1% lows. At 4K, the gap becomes even smaller, but the 4080 wins by a bit, which I think is within the margin of error. And we go on to a few productivity benchmarks. On 3D Mark x5, the 4080 has a nice lead over the 7900XT. V-Ray and Octane do not work on the 7900XT because both benchmarks require CUDA, which the 7900XT does not have. But that said, I've managed to benchmark Blender for both GPUs. Based on what I've seen and read, AMD has only recently supported Blender. That may explain why the score for the 7900XT. The 4080 is at least 200% faster than the 7900XT. But give it some time, maybe next year. Perhaps AMD will have caught up by then. Okay, enough numbers for now. The 7900XT uses the same design as the new TUF line GPUs first seen on this TUF 4080 and 4090. If you want to choose a GPU based on looks, the 7900XT uses a gunmetal color scheme compared to the 4080, which features a more silvery, shiny finish. Coming from the 6900XT, the TUF gaming logo has moved to here, but you still get a simple glow from this logo and strip here. For the front I/O, the 7900XT has 3DP and one HDMI port. Yes, you get one more HDMI port on the 4080, but I'm telling you, these display ports on the 7900XT are DisplayPort 2.1. In paper, you can run programs at 8K 165Hz or 4K 480Hz. But I don't think there are monitors out there which can handle such resolutions at such speeds. And of course, no GPUs can deliver such performance anyway. But it's good to know that we may get such performance someday. The 7900XT is slightly longer and thicker than the 4080. It is also slightly heavier, I think, because it uses the same heatsink and housing as a TUF 4090. The thicker heatsink definitely does its job, as you have seen earlier, giving it a nice cool 55 degrees during its operations. And because of the size of this card, according to the website, this 7900XT is 3.63 slots thick. It is 0.02 less slot thick than the 4080, but at this size anyway, which is almost 4 slots thick. Make sure that you have enough room on your motherboard and especially your PC case for this beefy GPU or GPUs. And one more thing, this 7900XT OC uses 3 8-pin power. Nothing too crazy about this, even though the stock AMD card only uses 2 8-pin power. 3 times 8-pin power is pretty standard for a GPU of its class, and my total power draw on games and Blender do not exceed 400 watts. The 400 watts consists of the rest of the components such as the CPU and the motherboard. I have also tested it. You should be able to game well with a 1000 watt power supply. A 1000 watt power supply should be more than enough power headroom even if you push this GPU to run in more intensive applications. And yes, you don't need an ATX 3.0 power supply. Worry about twisted 12-pin power cables as well as damaged power supplies. Okay, if you're wondering, there's that white elephant in the room. How does this 7900XT perform in ray tracing? Well, I did run some tests. Basically, ray tracing on AMD Radeon GPUs still need a lot of work. This 7900XT uses the second generation of ray accelerators. On Cyberpunk 2077, to be fair, for obvious reasons, I only use FSR quality to compare between the two GPUs. You can get a nice smooth frame rate at 1080p, but of course, if you're going to go RT on, it will definitely look better at higher resolutions. 1440p still not bad, early 60 FPS. Though, I believe the frames will drop if you are in a big firefight or just driving downtown with a lot of lights and mirrors. But 4K, yeah, if you like your cinematic 30 FPS, you can continue to play, but I'm sure it'll be a lot worse if you had a lot of bullets flying around. On Watch Dogs, similar to Cyberpunk, both GPUs perform well at 1080p with ray tracing on. As you go up to the higher resolutions, you can see the big drop in frames. At 4040p, the 4080 still maintains a more playable FPS than the 7900XT. But at 4K, both GPUs struggle to keep up, with the 7900XT lagging further behind. And there is no FSR on Watch Dogs Legion, but only DLSS for the green side. So then, where does this TUF 7900XT OC stand? I do not have the price for this GPU, but if I had to guess, the TUF 4080 costs Singapore 2.4K plus, so this TUF 7900XT probably may go for Singapore 2K plus. There are some pros and cons for this 7900XT. Definitely no issues for esports games. You get very high FPS when you pair it with a good enough CPU such as this 7700X. There should be no performance issues or lag when you use this GPU with a very high refresh rate monitor. On the AAA titles such as AC Valhalla and Far Cry 6, the 7900 XT performs also really well even at 4K ultra resolution. Both the 7900 XT and 4080 eat these games for lunch, breakfast and dinner. For Cyberpunk and Watch Dogs Legion, if you play these games without ray tracing, the 7900 XT can still perform well, but just take note when you play at 4K. There's FSR implementation on Cyberpunk, so you can play around with some of the FSR settings to get the best performance for this 7900 XT. As for ray tracing, the implementation on Radeon GPUs is still kinda new, though FSR has since improved. I do not have the numbers for 6900 XT or 6950 XT, but I believe the ray tracing performance has since improved from those older GPUs. And talking about hardware, I would love to see how AMD takes their high-end GPUs towards more creation-based applications. The results on Blender may seem a bit disappointing to say the least, but I think it's a good step providing an alternative to the elsewise dominating green GPUs with their CUDA-based applications and hardware. The 7900 XT and RDNA 3 introductions definitely make a fuss on NVIDIA. Team Green had to cut the prices for the 4080 and 4090 just to compete against the prices of the 7900 XT and XTX, at least in Europe. Anyway, the numbers don't lie. The 7900 XT is definitely a great GPU even at 4K. However, if you still want to have really nice ray tracing in games or use CUDA-based applications, the RTX 4080 is still the way to go. That said, do not count RDNA 3 out yet. We know that AMD will release FSR 3.0 next year. With more game studios implementing FSR and working their games to make better use of Radeon GPUs, I believe AMD Radeon will get a much bigger step towards finally matching hand-to-hand with NVIDIA, especially with ray tracing with better ray accelerators. And there's also this AMD RDNA 3 media engine, which sounds pretty exciting. Okay, that was a long one. I hope with this review, you can decide between these two TUFs. Don't worry, I also had a hard time. Like if you like this video, watch the video below and make sure to come back to Rematan for more awesome RDNA 3 content. I may finally have time to test the older AMD GPUs or even run this 7900 XT on an Intel platform.